Hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome to today's session. It's been a while. I took a class. So today we are going to see a very relevant topic that has been in the newspapers very recently, and a lot of you have asked me to take a session on this. That is why I'm taking this particular topic. Okay, the dowry system in India. So to the already existing members of this channel, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again in this video. To the newcomers, please make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can get notified whenever I schedule a new lecture. Okay, so let's directly get into the topic, the dowry system in India. So why is it in the news? First question, why is dowry system in the news? So recently, in the newspapers, we have seen a lot of alleged dowry deaths, especially from Kerala. Okay, I mean, this happens in almost all the states in India, but the one that got national attention very recently is dowry deaths in Kerala. So that is why this topic came into the news. And after that, there has been a series of incidents in various fields of life, which all talked about this. Even national media has talked about this for a very long time. All right. So, and a lot of initiatives and schemes and various other things has been formulated in order to make sure that this kinds of stuff does not happen in the future. But anyway, it's very shocking to note that around 40 to 50% of homicides in our country are attributed to dowry. Okay, of all the homicides that happens in our country, around 40 to 50% are actually attributed to dowry deaths. This is as per the NCRB data. All right, but this is not an individual incident. Okay, dowry death does not happen on one fine morning. This is actually the culmination of a process. Prior to this, there obviously is a lot of domestic violence, maybe related to dowry, or maybe even in other cases this happens. And women have to are forced to undergo various kinds of violence. Some, in certain cases, they come out against it and fight it in the court, or complain to the police or whatever. But in a lot of cases, women actually suffer through all these things and eventually commit suicide or maybe get murdered, whatever. All right, so all this has warranted a lot of measures from the side of government, from the side of public, from the side of activists, etc., etc. Clear? So rather than finding some ad hoc solutions, okay, so rather than finding some bandages or temporary fixes, we have to find, or we have to look for, a very long-term effective measure to counter all these things. Clear? So this lesson or this lecture on dowry system in India should be placed in the context of a bigger picture of women's safety in India, especially in their domestic settings. There are plenty of laws regarding all that. We have, for example, in workplaces, we have the Vishaka guidelines put forth by the Supreme Court. Even in domestic cases, we have acts that are against domestic violence. Clear? But today we are only going to focus on this particular topic, that is dowry system in India. So before we move ahead, let me just remind you, welcome once again, welcome to Madhav Shankar classes. I am Madhav Shankar Arvarya. Please subscribe to this channel to get notified of my videos. The entire lecture note will be provided to you in the PDF format in my Telegram channel, t.me/msrw1. You can also download it directly from here. The link is given underneath in the YouTube description section. Okay, so before talking about dowry, let's talk about marriage. All right, this is in an academic perspective for your exam point of view. So there are actually 8 types of Hindu marriages. Clear? In ancient India, or according to the Indian tradition, there are actually 8 kind of Hindu marriages. Good evening, Devi Prasad. Good evening, Satya Pandey. One more thing, if you have any doubts or queries, please feel free to put it in the YouTube live chat. I will be looking into it. Also, this will be a very short session. I will finish it by like 30 minutes. Okay. So there are 8 types of Hindu marriages. Let's check one by one, purely in an academic sense. Okay. First one, Brahma marriage. So what is Brahma marriage? According to Brahma marriage, in this practice, the parents who search for a bride for their son considers the family background of the girl. Okay. So the first and foremost point to note here is, it is the son's, or it is the groom's parent that looks for a bride. It's not the other way around. Okay, the boy's parent looks for a suitable girl. Clear? And looks for the family background of that girl, etc., etc. And the bride's father, that is the girl's father, ensures that the boy has acquired knowledge on the Vedas. Clear? So acquiring knowledge of the Vedas is actually done in the first ashrama of life. I hope you know the different ashramas in life: Brahmacharya, Grihasthashrama, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. So a person who has completed the Brahmacharya ashrama of his life is considered to have acquired knowledge of Vedas. So this is what the bride's parent look in a boy. Clear? And in this form of marriage, there is no system of dowry. In Brahma marriage, there is no monetary or cash or kind transaction between the participating families. So because of all these aspects, Brahma marriage is considered as the supreme most, or the most acknowledged, or the most superior among all the 8 forms of marriages in India. Clear? This is known as Brahma marriage. The most important point here being, it is actually the groom's father, the boy's father or boy's parents, who actually look for a suitable bride for their son. Clear? Second one is Daiva marriage. What is Daiva marriage? In Daiva marriage, what happens is the bride's parents, okay, the girl's parents, they will wait for some time trying to find a suitable groom, or see if the a suitable groom approaches them. And after a particular time, if the girl is not married up to that particular point of time, then the girl is actually married to a priest. A priest means a person who conducts all these sacrificial ceremonies and all these things. All right. So once again, the girl's parents will wait for a particular amount of time, by the end of which, if the girl is not yet married, then the girl is actually married to a priest. This is known as Daiva marriage. And this is actually considered as inferior to the Brahma marriage. Why? Because this is considered degrading to the womanhood. Obviously. Right? I mean, the girl is actually married to a priest just because her marriage has not been conducted up to that particular point of time. So this is actually derogatory of women. This is actually degrading the status of womanhood. So this is considered as inferior to Brahma marriage. This is Daiva. Third form is Arsha marriage. In Arsha marriage, girl is actually married to sages or rishis in exchange of 2 cows. Okay, so the bride's parents or the girl's parents marry their daughter to a sage or a rishi. In exchange, they will get 2 cows. So this is Arsha marriage. So this is basically a transaction, an exchange of goods. Again, not such very much degrading of women's status. Obviously. Clear? Also, usually the sage or the rishi is of very old age. So the young girl is married to a very old person. Clear? And usually that person may not have any remarkable qualities or anything. So again, this is also considered not so much a noble type of marriage. Fourth one is Prajapataya marriage. So Prajapataya marriage is very closely related to Brahma marriage. Okay, these two are very much closely related, except in certain things. The most important or most striking difference being, in Prajapataya marriage, it is the bride's father who goes into looking for a suitable groom. All right. In Brahma marriage, it is the groom's father who searches for a suitable bride for his son. And here in Prajapataya marriage, it is the bride's father who looks or searches for a suitable groom for his daughter. That is the prime difference. Clear? Number 5, Gandharva marriage. Gandharva marriage is very similar to modern day love marriage. Okay, I mean, not exactly the same, but some similarities are there. Clear? So here the bride and the groom, they get married secretly. Okay, without the knowledge of their parents. So basically something like the eloping of modern days. Okay, I mean, if the families are not accepting the relationship, sometimes the bride and groom will just elope and get married secretly without the permission of their family. So that is basically what is Gandharva marriage. Without the knowledge of their parents, the bride and groom secretly get married. So obviously not considered as one of the right kind of marriage, because there is no permission or consent from the parents. Okay, family system is very important in Indian context. Okay, I mean, it's very much closely associated with the traditions of India. So in that sense, this is considered again as not such a good kind of marriage. Clear? We are not talking about the modern day sense where these are two individuals having their rights, etc., etc. I'm just talking about the kind of marriage that existed back in ancient times. Clear? And in ancient times, the family system is very important, very prime to the society, that with marriage without their consent is looked down upon. Then comes a very important form of marriage, that is Asura marriage. Take a note of this one. This is what we are going to look into in a bit depth in this chapter, in this session. Asura marriage. Why? Because this is the root of dowry. The roots of dowry can be traced back to the Asura form of marriage in ancient India. So what is this Asura marriage? In Asura marriage, the groom, okay, the boy, he may not have much qualities or anything that is sought by other people, but he is from a very wealthy family. So the groom will give out as much wealth as he can afford to the bride's family and relatives in exchange for the bride. Okay, so he is not able to win a bride using his personal qualities or whatever, but he is very wealthy. So he basically gives away his wealth, or gives a huge amount of wealth to the bride's family and relatives in exchange for getting the bride. So more or less, this is like buying a product. Okay, the groom will give out a lot of money, a lot of whatever to the bride's side, and in exchange gets the bride. So actually, this is like a business transaction where a lot of money is given to buy something. Understood? So this is Asura marriage, and the traces of dowry can be actually be traced back into Asura marriage. Seventh one, Rakshasa marriage. What happens here? In Rakshasa marriage, the groom fights battles with the bride's family. Okay, and wins the battle. And after winning the battle, he persuades the bride to marry him. Sometimes even forcible methods are used by the groom during the wedding ceremony. So against the bride's will, this is conducted. And we can see examples of Rakshasa marriage a lot in Indian mythologies and Puranas, etc., etc. No? We have seen all these things, where one king will fight with the other king, and after winning the battle, basically abducts the other person's wife and forcibly enters into marriage. So that is Rakshasa marriage, considered as a very derogatory or very bad kind of marriage. Last one, Paishaja marriage. Paishaja marriage is considered as the most inferior among all the 8 types. Why? Because the girl's wish is not considered. In Rakshasa marriage also it's the same, but not always maybe. But here in Paishaja marriage, obviously the girl's wish is not at all considered. And the bride's family does not get anything. Okay, the girl is taken away, but the bride's family does not get anything. No kind of gift or any kind, nothing is given to the bride's family. I mean, that is a very controversial statement. If something is given to the bride's family, is it considered okay? That is a question. Okay, but this is just the practice that happened in ancient India. Okay, that's what I'm saying. So in this form of marriage, men would marry a woman whom he had seduced while she was asleep, intoxicated, or insane. So now you know why this is considered as the most inferior kind. Marriage takes place when the woman is either asleep or intoxicated or even insane. And because of this evil nature of this particular form of marriage, this kind of marriage was later on prohibited. Clear? So these are the 8 types of marriages that existed in ancient India. So according to the Hindu traditions and all, there are 8 types of Hindu marriages: Brahma, Daiva, Arsha, Prajapateya, Gandharva, Asura, Rakshasa, and Paishaja. I hope this is very clear to you. This is purely for academic purposes. I mean, you can expect questions in UPSC. But as far as dowry is concerned, we have to take a closer look at the 6th one, that is Asura form of marriage. So now let's come to dowry, the topic in our hand. So what is dowry? That is the first question. No? So what exactly constitutes dowry? In simple terms, dowry means any property or valuable security, okay, given or agreed to be given directly or indirectly by one party to the marriage to the other party to the marriage. This is what is dowry. It can be any property or any valuable security given or agreed to be given. It's not necessary that it should be given. It could be a an agreement also. Clear? Either directly or indirectly. Even if you try to give dowry through your relatives, even that is considered as dowry and you will be punished. Okay, so this is the basic definition of dowry. This constitutes dowry. Question is, did this always exist in India? Was Indian women treated like this for a very long time? Was India always this much oppressive to her women? Right? If we look at some of the ancient scriptures in India, we find that women are considered with utmost respect. Okay, I mean, we have goddesses like Saraswati, Lakshmi, Parvati, considered as goddess of knowledge, goddess of wealth, goddess of Shakti. Correct? So women, I mean, have been considered with such great respects in at least in certain areas. And then we have a very famous practice in ancient India, that is Swayamvara. What is Swayamvara? I hope you all know what Swayamvara is. According to Swayamvara, various princes from different adjacent countries are called upon or invited into the marriage ceremony of the daughter of this king, and they all assembled in the area. And this princess or the daughter of the king, she gets to choose the groom. She gets to choose her husband. That is Swayamvara. It is up to the woman to choose her husband. So again, here also it is the choice of the woman. So these sorts of practices can be seen in ancient India. So when did this change? At what point of history did the status of women go down to the drains, so that women were eventually equated as a commodity of a mere business transaction? The roots of all this is again in the ancient period. This pernicious system, which has brought in utmost cruelty and misery to all these families in modern day and in the medieval ages, we can find the root of dowry system in ancient India. The origins of dowry. So again, as I have mentioned in the first slide, Asura form of marriage is where the traces can be found in the earliest of times. Basically, in Asura form of marriage, a sort of purchase is done. Correct? The bride is actually purchased by the groom. Since the groom cannot get a bride based on any other qualities, he basically spends a lot of money or gives a lot of money or something else to the bride's family, and in exchange gets the bride. So that is Asura form of marriage. And this payment of consideration is called shulka or bride price. Okay, so whatever the groom's side gives the bride's side, this money or whatever, maybe in cash or in kind, whatever it is, this is known as shulka or bride price. Remember, this is given from groom's side to the bride's side, from the boy's side to the girl's side, not the other way around as we see today. Okay, problem was, again, as I have said, this sort of marriage was considered as a kind of very inferior practice, degrading the status of women, because this is more like a business transaction. So the lawgivers of those times, such as Manu, for example, considers this as a sale of the girl and obviously condemns it. Okay, lawgivers, including Manu, finds this as a sale of a girl and naturally condemns it. But Manu actually allows gifts to be given during marriage. That is okay. So now the question is, what is the difference between a gift and a transaction? Right, gifts are voluntary. Okay, if I am going to say, for example, I have a book here. Okay, so say this is the Lakshmikant book. So if I am going to gift this book to someone, it is voluntary. Nobody is pressuring me to it. And I am not getting anything in return, or I am not demanding anything in return. I can simply give this to someone. So that is gift. It's up to me. Okay, and it's up to them whether to accept it or not. But instead, if I add certain conditions to this, I will give you this book but in return, you should pay me this much rupees, or in return, you should give me that. Then that is not a gift. It is a transaction. It becomes a consideration. That is the difference between a gift and a consideration. So Manu allows gifts, but considerations or say such transactions or selling of a girl is not allowed. Clear? So because of all these, contaminations, and because of this, all these, resistance that eventually happened, this system of bride price started to take a step back. What happened was this became merely symbolic. Okay, so the system continued. The bride price was given by the groom to the bride's side, but eventually this became symbolic that very soon, immediately afterwards, the entire thing the groom side gives the bride side was returned by the bride side. Okay, the boy gives the girl side something, and after a while, the entire thing is returned to the boy. So this transaction is merely symbolic for its traditional purposes only. Clear? So this method, this is known as Varashulka. I will show you this in the next slide, but for now, just take here. Okay, it's known as Varashulkam. So basically, the girls, in effect, the net transaction is zero. Whatever is given is taken, returned. Clear? But since this is a traditional practice, obviously it had certain traditional backings, religious, backing, etc., etc. So this became a duty. Okay, you have to follow this practice as a duty. So this gradually developed. This is how dowry developed in India, in ancient India. Problem was, eventually, as time went on, this duty became an essentiality. If you remember, when we studied ancient India, we talked about Bali. Okay, Bali was a voluntary gift given by the clan members to the clan leader or the king, whatever. So that was initially voluntary, but at a later stage, Bali became compulsory. The kings or the clan leaders started to demand it. Same thing happened here also. A practice which was initially considered as a duty started to become an essential negotiation prior to a marriage in some point of time. So those gifts, or say dowries, were originally started as love gifts for the marriages of upper caste individuals, but during the medieval period, the demands for dowries became a precursor for marriage. Clear? This sort of transactions initially existed among the upper classes, but eventually it spread to various classes, it filtered downwards, and it eventually became a precursor for a marriage, a precondition. Understood? It was supposed to be love gifts, but it became a precondition. So as I have mentioned in the previous slide, the bride price is actually termed in ancient India as Kanya Shulkam. Okay, the bride price means the amount or the money or whatever is given by the groom side to the bride side. That is known as Kanya Shulkam. And as I have mentioned, due to the various resistances and all, eventually the entire thing was returned. And that return transaction is named as Varashulkam. Okay, so Kanya Shulkam is given and Varashulkam gets everything back. So next transaction becomes zero. Clear? But the problem was, as time went on, eventually society became more and more patriarchal, etc., etc. We all know that's part of history. And Kanya Shulkam disappeared. And Varashulkam stayed on as Varakatna. Varakatna means dowry. So one part of this transaction disappeared. So this Kanya Shulkam disappeared. But Varashulkam continued. So from the bride's side to the groom's side, the transaction was continued because of the patriarchal nature of the society, etc., etc. So it transformed into dowry. This is the base or origin of dowry in ancient India. But this is not the dowry that we are talking about in modern India. Modern India, we have a lot of other factors that constituted the dowry as we know today. But before looking into that or how that happened in India, let's see if there are certain influences around the world which inspired all these practices in India. According to Roman law, a woman had the right to demand dowry from her father. Remember, in ancient and medieval times, women were not breadwinners of the family. They were confined within the walls of their houses. They did not go to job or anything, especially in upper class families and all. So the woman had the right to demand dowry from her father as a compensation for the joint household that she is going to maintain with her husband later on. Okay, since she is not a breadwinner, she is taking this amount from her father to contribute to the family life that she is going to have with her husband. Clear? So again, the main point being, it is the woman's right. The woman can demand it from her father. It's not like the husband can demand it from wife's father. No. Clear? But this system also has influenced the dowry system in India. It is believed that in medieval times, it was a gift in cash or kind given to the bride by her family to maintain her independence after marriage. So naturally, women did not have employment opportunities at those times. So in order for the girl to have proper independence in her marital life, the woman's parents give some kind of say cash or kind to the woman for her maintenance. This is what was typically uh, you know a sort of dowry in medieval times for the maintenance of the woman given by her father or her parents to her, not demanded by the boy's side. Okay, so in the pre-colonial India, dowry was an institution managed by women for women to enable them to establish their status and have recourse in an emergency. Managed by women for women, that is true. She has demanded dowry from her father for her own maintenance because she is not allowed to go to work or anything. Women were not given adequate employment opportunities, so she had no source of income. She had to depend on her husband. So she is just trying to save her position. So in other words, dowry wealth continued to be owned by the wife and not by the husband or his family. Clear? So whatever is given as dowry is given to the girl. She owns it, she uses it, it's her discretionary property. All right, but during the colonial period, something happened. Obviously, the Britishers, as usual, messed things up for Indians. Okay, and it is during the colonial period, dowry became mandatory. Dowry became the only legal way to get married. Certain settlements or certain say laws which the British implemented eventually made dowry a mandatory thing in India. This is what we see in modern day. Okay, so what did the British do? British has implemented something very commonly known as permanent settlement system in Bengal. I think every one of you know what a permanent settlement system is. If you do not know, please refer to my modern India classes. I have explained it there. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about permanent settlement system. There is a lot of points regarding that, but the relevant point is, according to permanent settlement system, which was implemented in Bengal in 1793 by Lord Cornwallis, this system led to the introduction of private ownership of land. Okay, private ownership of land was one of the biggest outcomes of permanent settlement system implemented by the British. In Britain, at that time, women did not have property rights. So naturally, when this system was implemented in India and when private ownership started in India, here also British did not allow women to have property rights. So British prohibited women from owning any property at all. It meant that all the wealth that a woman got from her parents would be owned by her husband instead. This is the root of dowry as we see today. Clear? They implemented the permanent settlement system, which caused a lot of things. Please refer to that somewhere else, regarding the zamindar, tenant, etc., etc. Most importantly, it introduced a system known as private ownership of land, and women were not given, ownership rights. So naturally, everything that was inherited or owned by the women, the property that was owned by the women naturally went into the male counterpart. So all the property went to the husband. Clear? Because women did not have any legal ownership rights. So now the patriarchal society in India started to become greedy. Once they found out that women could not own property in India legally, what happened? The husband and the family started looking at the incoming bride as a source of property and wealth. Correct, na? So if, for say, if a person, okay, if a boy, he gets married to a middle class family, he will get, X amount of dowry, X amount of property, because since that girl cannot own property, all that she all her parents have will go to that boy. But at the same time, that boy marries to a very wealthy family, then he will get more property, more wealth. So naturally, the patriarchal society in India started to become more and more greedy, and they tried to get more and more wealthy brides and try to engage into relationships with higher dowry. Clear? So this basically became a kind of competition. If you want to have a good groom or a very good groom, then you should be able to pay a lot of money. The more you pay, the better your chances are to get a good groom. Understood? And the patriarchal nature of the Indian society basically encouraged this practice. So this basically became a groom hunt, a competition to achieve better groom. Right? Every parent will want their daughter to have a good groom, obviously. Correct? So they were willing to pay more and more. The only problem was wealthy families could afford it. The middle class sections, lower class sections, they are not able to pay anything at all. And when their children, the girls, go to other families, they have to suffer through dowry demands and all the harassments and eventually maybe even death. Clear? So because of this system implemented by the British, marriage became just another business deal. Nothing more than that. And it is very shocking to see that the permanent settlement system, which was brought in 1793, brought all these things together with it. And it was only in 1956, that is like 7 years after independence, 9 years after independence, that Hindu personal laws were amended, giving the right to women to inherit property. Only after independence, that too after 9 years of independence, women finally got the right to inherit ancestral property, but again, not at par with men. It was unequal. And it was only in 2005 that women and men got equal status as far as ancestral property was concerned. An amendment happened again in 2005, and it is only through this amendment women got at par or equal status with men as far as ancestral property is concerned. Just think about it. India has a tradition of like thousands of years, and it is only 16 years ago that women finally got at par treatment with men as far as ancestral property is concerned. Clear? So that is a very shocking reality of our country. So now you might think that we are talking about Hindu marriages, Hindu practices, traditions. So is this all something related to Hinduism? Does that mean there is no dowry in Christianity or Islam or whatever? No, obviously no. Every religion has its own version of dowry. Okay, but why we emphasized on Hinduism is because majority of India are Hindus, and that Hinduism was the culture that developed in India over thousands of years. The mainstream, most of the mainstream was as per Hinduism. That's why we talked the roots in this. But what happened was, taking a closer look at other religions in this one particular slide, the governments which came in India after independence, what did they do? They did not completely take a new stance. Okay, they did not scrap every law British made and come up with something completely different and new. A lot of India's constitution was actually borrowed from Government of India Act of 1935. We all know that. Similarly, a lot of laws which were implemented by British were preserved by Indians or continued by India. or at least continued with minor amendments and all. IPC, CRPC, even now it exists. It was actually framed by Lord Macaulay in 19th century, earlier half of 19th century. Correct. So a lot of things are continuing. The problem is that when Britishers ruled India, they ruled using a very interesting policy known as divide and rule. They wanted to divide Indians. They wanted to make sure that Indians fought against Indians so that they are, they can manipulate and make the most of it. They tried to play Hindus against Muslims, Muslims against Hindus, Hindus against Christians, all sorts of issues. They tried to build those divisions within India. So naturally, the personal laws that existed in India during this period was based on religion. Personal laws of a person was actually based on religion, and this was continued by the successive governments in India also. Even now, as we speak, personal laws are not uniform. We do not have a uniform civil code. Correct? So Hindus are governed by specific Hindu marriage laws, Hindu civil codes. Islam has its own, Christians has their own. Okay, all individual religious identities have their own. Clear? So obviously, Muslim women and Christian women, they also had very, very less right. For example, a very important case as far as Islam is concerned is the Shah Bano case. I think all of you know this. If you are not familiar with this case, please read on it from Google. Shah Bano case, very important for UPSC as well. This was a very famous judgment given by the Supreme Court in connection with the personal or civil rights of Islam woman, a Muslim woman. And the Supreme Court, in its judgment in the Shah Bano case, ordered the husband to provide maintenance to his divorced wife, Shah Bano. But this very famous judgment of the Supreme Court was immediately nullified by Rajiv Gandhi government, which was in power in 1986, by implementing the Muslim Women Protection of the Rights on Divorce Act. So obviously, again, this act is for Muslim women. So personal codes or laws of Muslim women are actually based on this law. It's different from that of Hindu women. It's different from that of Christian women. Clear? So the civil rights of individuals in this country are looked upon or are regulated by religion, not nation or not state or anything. It's based on religion. It's not based on national identity. Clear? As far as Christians are concerned, the marriage of Christians in India still is regulated by Indian Christians Marriage Act of 1872 and the Indian Divorce Act of 1869. And both these are considered as unfair. Okay? And in order to plug all the issues of these acts, a bill was proposed in 1990 named as Christian Marriage and Matrimonial Causes Bill. Obviously, there is no progress in that bill. Okay, it was proposed in 1990 and it stays like that. No progress, nothing. And obviously, Uniform Civil Code. Uniform Civil Code in this country, which seeks uniform laws to all citizens, irrespective of their religions, is being frowned upon as being communal. That is again correct. If there was Uniform Civil Code, then every woman or every individual in this country will have a uniform civil law. Marry, for divorce, for marriage, or whatever. But because we do not have a uniform civil code, and because the personal lives of people or the civil lives of people are actually based on the religion, there are lots of disparities between women of various religion. I mean, no, some of them have more rights, some of them have less rights, some of them have more say, more liberal, some of them are more conservative. Clear? And it is a mess of a law. Understood? So this is the context that we are speaking. So this is how dowry came or emerged in India, and this is how it affected different parts of India. Or this is how it came to the evil that it is today. It has its roots in ancient India, and after the very famous act or the permanent revenue settlement system by British, the modern day dowry system evolved into a much more vicious monster. I will look into your comments. Okay, I will take it at the end of this chapter. Okay, please be patient. I will definitely look into it. I have only 2 more slides. After that, I will look into it. So what are the factors that influence the growth of dowry system? So we found the origin. Okay, we know how it evolved. But what are the factors that led to the growth of dowry system? Number one, customs and traditions. I don't think I have to explain this. A lot of things in India are based on customs and traditions. Some of them are actually good, but some of them are evil, but for some reason we still continue it. Correct. Even now, if Sabarimala case was the best example. During that case, there was lots of argument from different sections of the society that menstruation is impure, and menstruation renders the woman impure. Custom. Okay, unfortunate, but a lot of customs are actually very bad. Customs and traditions are actually very bad, and some of them are good. So, problem is India is very much into customs and traditions, and this played its part in dowry system. Social structure. India society has always been patriarchal. Correct, na? I mean, we have matrilineal societies and kingdoms here and there. Okay, but majority or in most of in history, India has been patriarchal in nature. Also, we have joint family system. So, what is the peculiarity of joint family system? Joint family system is very much a part of Indian tradition. Okay, family has a lot of say in all these things. If a marriage takes place, it's not between the girl and the boy. It's usually between the girl's family and the boy's family. So the girl's family has to accept it, boy's family has to accept it, and it is lots of gives and giving and taking happens, etc., etc. You know how it is. Although it should be between the boy and girl, but because of this very traditional joint family system in India, which has its merits obviously, but in these cases, it also encouraged the dowry system. Now, social and religious pressure for early marriage of girls before puberty. Again, this is again associated with certain stupid beliefs in ancient India. Okay, so there is this belief that if a girl attains her puberty in her father's house or in her parents' house, then those parents will go to hell. Okay, I mean, stupid nonsense, but unfortunately, that's the case. Okay, this wild superstition that exists in India, even now in certain remote locations or rural setups, this superstition is still there. If a girl attains her puberty in her parents' house, then the parents are doomed to hell. So what would the parents do? Parents would try to marry off the girl as soon as possible. Correct? So early marriage, child marriage. Clear? So in order to conduct that marriage at an early age, the girl's parents will give out anything to the boy. Okay, you can take all this wealth, you can take this property, you can take that, this. Clear? So again, dowry is being encouraged by this traditional outlook. Understood? Now, encouragement of early arranged marriages. Arranged marriage is another very common system in India. In Western countries and all, that system is coming less and less, and it's more being love marriage and all. Okay, but in arranged marriages, the problem is it is the family that decides. Correct? Family decides, by looking into the groom side or the bride side if they want to conduct it or not. Correct? You know how an arranged marriage works. And basically, in modern day India, arranged marriages happens through matrimonial websites. Basically through advertisement. So basically, a person decides who he or she is going to live with based on advertisements that you see online. Okay, that is the condition, unfortunately. But anyway, this encouragement of early arranged marriages also contributes to the system of dowry. Why? Because naturally, the parents would want their daughter or son to go into a wealthy family or say successful family, and and they would want a compensation, or you know how it is. Now, caste element and hypergamous marriages. That is also correct. Dowry system in India is not uniform. Okay, the amount of dowry that is asked or given varies between different castes. In some castes this is very important and lot of money is asked, but in certain other castes the comparativity is less, so it is not uniform. Okay, also hypergamous marriage. Well, what is this hypergamous marriages? Obviously, it's a very common practice where a particular boy or girl would want to marry to a higher status or a higher class family. Correct? Think about it. A girl is looking for a groom, and the parents of the girl wanted their child to get married into a higher status family or higher class family, higher or more wealthy family. So that aspiration basically encourages the parents to, provide more to the girl. I mean, if it's to the girl, it's fine, but what happens is provide more and more money and wealth to the boys' side. That tendency, that's known as hypergamous marriages, and this tendency also encourages dowry. If they look for equal status families, then it's fine. But if they want to go to a higher class family, these are all nonsense. Okay, I mean, we should not encourage any of these things, but unfortunately, it happens. So when they aspire to marry their daughter to a higher standard family or higher class family or a more wealthy family, naturally they will put more and more wealth into the marriage and encourages dowry. Dowry as a matter of status and prestige. This derogatory evil practice has actually become a symbol of status and prestige in India. Clear? In the traditional setup, the more dowry you give, your status and prestige is more. I mean, unfortunately, that is how the society has seen dowry for a very long time. Rather than seeing dowry for what it is, a social evil, it is being seen as a status or a symbol of prestige. That also encourages dowry. Growth of women population outnumbering men. So this not uniformly everywhere, but in certain areas this happens. Okay, there are more number of women than men. The sex ratio is more to a higher extent tilted towards women. So what happens is the number of men is less for number of men are less compared to women. So in order to get married, they are willing to pay more. So this is not something that happens everywhere, but this is also a contributing factor. That's all. Endogamous and exogamous restrictions. Yes, think about it. In India, we have this caste system whereby a particular person in a caste gets married to that caste only, or say one particular other caste only. Okay, he or she is not allowed to get married to a third class or third castes. Similarly, inter-religious marriages or inter-caste marriages, all these are looked down upon in the Indian traditional society. So what happens? This forces the girl to marry to somebody within that caste itself, thereby limiting the options. Clear? This also encourages dowry. Obviously, why? Because the girl has to find a groom from her own caste or say from one particular caste itself, and therefore she will have to say compromise with someone who asks for a particular dowry. Clear? So that is endogamous marriage. Exogamous means to a different caste. So these sorts of restrictions also encourages dowry system in India. Illiteracy. I should have put this point at the top. Illiteracy. We might think that people almost all in India now can read and write and all. Yeah, maybe true, but still a lot of girls or women, or there is a huge section in India who are still very much illiterate, and this also contributes to dowry. How? Because they are unaware of their rights. We see articles, we see new television reports, etc., against dowry, against all these things, but you have to understand that there are people in India who are unable to read and understand what all these things are. Especially in rural areas, we've come across lots and lots of women who still are unaware of their own rights. They think that they are supposed to be, like servants to their husbands. It's not. They are individuals. They have their own right and they deserve a higher dignity or quality of life. They are unaware about that fact. Why? Because traditionally, this is what they are seeing. Their mothers also lived like that. Their grandmothers also lived like that. So, it's supposed to be like that for them too. Illiteracy is a huge issue. That is why Government of India has brought out various educational reforms, including Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and these kinds of things, whereby girls are given education, compulsory education, and also various financial schemes to make sure that these girls will not get married at and age before 18. Then female unemployment. Another very, very important point. Lack of financial independence is one of the most important cause of all these harassments and violence and things, dowry deaths. If the woman had her own financial resources, her own financial independence, then she can have, a much bolder stand in the society, right? Otherwise, she is merely dependent upon her husband. Clear? But if she is financially independent, then she can have a much higher degree of freedom. So employment, as far as female community is concerned, is very, very, very important. Then female unemployment is one of the prime causes of all these things in India. So these are the factors that basically influence the growth of dowry system. So what are the impacts? We know the factors that led to this. So what are the impacts? Gender discrimination and development of sex delinquency. Correct. Let me read this for you. As per the State of World Population 2020 report by the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, India accounts for 45.8 million of world's 142.6 million missing females over the past 50 years. India accounts for 45.8 million missing females over the past 50 years. So what is this missing females? Missing females means, I will read it. Missing females are women missing from the population at given dates due to the cumulative effect of postnatal and prenatal sex selection in the past. So if sex selection did not exist in the world, then these many number of women should have been there in the population according to statistical extrapolation. But because of postnatal and prenatal sex selection, these women are not there in the population. These many number of women are less in the population. This is what is known as missing females. Clear? So obviously, dowry, the system of dowry has facilitated something and another evil known as sex selection. This is clearly banned in India, but unfortunately, there are places where still these things are done. Middle and lower class people are most affected. Correct? Wealthy people can afford to give this. Okay, I'm not encouraging it or anything, but it's a fact that wealthy people can give them whatever money they want. But and as far as lower, not so wealthy people are concerned, say poor sections of people are concerned, they cannot demand too much anyway. Okay, so both ends are there. As far as very poor people are concerned, they won't demand too much from the bride side. And very poor, as far as very wealthy people are concerned, they can afford to give whatever is being demanded. The middle sections of the people and the lower middle class people, here there is a disparity. Okay, the amount that is asked or the amount that is sought is much higher than what is afforded by the families. So this is the class of people who are most affected by dowry and other such harassments. Violence against women. According to the National Crimes Records Bureau 2009 data, for IPC cases, a woman becomes a victim of dowry death roughly every 1 hour. Okay, just think about it. Every 1 hour, a woman becomes a victim of dowry deaths. But we only hear about it when some media houses actually puts it in a very prime time news. Correct. We recently heard about the dowry deaths in Kerala. Only recent, some of the medias in Kerala brought it up. That's it. This is happening in India everywhere. One woman is died because of dowry. One woman succumbs to dowry death every 1 hour in India. Most of them are unnoticed by our society. Only when some of the channels take this up into their prime time, it gets attention, and we do a lot of things, and it again goes to no use. Things go back to square one, and then again someone commits this dowry death, and again this comes into the news. Another one, gender imbalance. Birth of a girl is regarded as a curse. Correct. We can see some of the states in Kerala. Some of the states in India. Haryana is one of the states which has the worst sex ratio. 833 females to every 1000 male. Very, very, very low sex ratio. Okay, if it is in parity, it should be 1,000 for 1,000. Okay, that is equality. In Kerala, it's actually more. There are more number of females than males. But in Haryana, there is only 833 females for 1,000 males. One of the worst sex ratio. Again, Uttarakhand also has very low sex ratio. This also shows that there is huge, you know, selection as far as birth of a child is concerned. Birth of a girl is regarded as a curse by many families. Why? Because in the future you have to give dowry, if in order to get her married. So nobody wants a girl. Economic bankruptcy. In order to marry a girl, we know that some of the parents actually takes big loans from the bank and they cannot pay it back on time, goes on to all sorts of issues. Okay, we see that in almost all movies regarding all these topics. And that is a very common practice in India also. Lots of families go bankrupt because they are not able to pay the loan that they took for marriage of their girl. Unfortunate, but it's a fact. Decline social status and self-esteem of the women. Also correct. Just read about all the above points. There is gender discrimination. There is violence against women. There is gender imbalance. Their parents are going bankrupt. So all these makes the woman think that they are a burden to the society. Okay, they themselves will lose their self-esteem. They are being told that you are supposed to behave like this. You are supposed to be like this. Okay, and if you are a boy, this may not be the case, but since you are a girl, you are doing all these things. So this basically destroys the self-esteem of a woman. So all these are the impacts of dowry and associated violence in the society. In order to curb all these things, the Dowry Prohibition Act was passed in 1961. Okay, again, another very, very interesting fact, it was passed in 1961 and this year is 2021. Even after 50 years, pretty much this is useless. Okay, Dowry Prohibition Act is there, but apparently nobody cares about it. Let's see what this act says. The act actually declares it to be offensive to give, take, or demand dowry, and to even abet the giving or taking of dowry. You can't give dowry, you can't take dowry, or you can't say demand dowry. You can't even abet giving or taking dowry also. So all these are offenses as per the Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961. Clear? And the punishments are also given: imprisonment up to 5 years and a fine up to rupees 15,000, or the value of dowry given, whichever is more. If you give a dowry of say 10 lakh rupees, then you will have to remit a fine of 10 lakh rupees. Okay, so depending on the amount, 15,000 or the dowry, whichever is more, you have to pay that as fine. These are the punitive measures. What is the problem? Why is this act ineffective? Because dowry has been legally defined as a consideration for the marriage under act. So again, as I have mentioned in the earlier part of this class, this dowry is defined as a consideration. Consideration means what? With a precondition. If you give me this much dowry, we will proceed with the marriage. So that is the precondition. So if a precondition is associated with the marriage, then it becomes a consideration. So dowry has been legally defined as a consideration. Okay, this is given in the section 2 of Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961. It basically that section 2 defines all these things about dowry. There is an explanation associated with this section, and that says the following: any present or gift made at the time of marriage to either party by any person are excluded from the purview of section 2 of the act. Okay, any present or gift made at the time of marriage to either party by any person are excluded from the purview of dowry. Which means what? This is a very, this is the biggest loophole of this act. You can sugarcoat dowry as a gift. That is the main loophole. Dowry is now manipulated as to look like a gift. The person who is giving dowry will not accept that this is dowry. Why? Because giving dowry is also an offense under this act. The person who demands dowry or takes dowry obviously will not accept that this is not a gift, because again that is also punishable under this act. So both the giver and the acceptor, receiver, both of them will say that this is a gift. And because it is a gift, there is no punitive measures. Why? Because the section 2 of, there is this loophole in the Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961. Biggest loophole. Clear. Also, this act does not properly define what is a consideration, what is a gift, what is a present, etc., etc. So again, complete confusion, and the better your lawyer, the better your chances of getting off from all these things. Understood? So we need proper amendments. It is the need of the hour. Is this act the only method to preserve women against dowry or protect women against dowry? No, there are some other very related laws also. For example, section 304B of IPC. This is something that we see in news whenever a dowry death comes into place. Even in the Kerala case, we saw this section being applied into the accused. What does this say? I will read it out. According to section 304B of IPC, it states that if a woman dies within 7 years of marriage by any burns or bodily injury, or it was revealed that before her marriage she was exposed to cruelty or harassment by her husband or other relative of the husband in connection to demand of dowry, then the death of the woman will be considered as a dowry death. Understood? So if the woman dies within 7 years of marriage through any burns or bodily injury, or if it is revealed that she has been harassed by her husband or her husband's relatives in connection to the demand of dowry, then that death will be considered as a dowry death. This is a provision in IPC that is against dowry. Section 498A IPC, another one, very common one that we see in the news. This one states that if a husband or any relative of him causes mental or physical harm to a woman, then they will be punishable under the said section. Mental or physical, any sort of harm, if it is inflicted upon a woman by the husband or any of his relatives, then that is punishable under section 498A of IPC. Then in the Indian Evidence Act, section 113B states that if a woman dies concerning any demand for dowry, and it was shown that soon before her death she was subjected to harassment or cruelty by any person, then the court will assume such a person responsible for her death. Understood? If woman dies concerning some demands of dowry, and if it is shown that these people, or this number of people have harassed that woman in the name of dowry prior to her death, then these people will be considered as responsible for her death. Indian Evidence Act, section 113B, again tries to protect women against dowry, and unfortunately of no use so far. Now, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. This is the latest one of all these. One of the very good act, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. It not only covers dowry, it is a comprehensive act which covers everything. It encompasses all forms of physical, verbal, emotional, economic, and sexual abuse. So it's a comprehensive protection package for women as far as the legal area is concerned. But even after all these things, still we have plenty of dowry deaths and harassments, and women are supposed to going through a lot of all these things in the society. There are some other very important factors that contributes to this. Most importantly, misuse. Okay, I'm sorry. There is only, I think, only one or two slides. One more slide remaining. Sorry for the length, elongated class. I wasn't expecting it to go this long. So misuse. Okay, so India Supreme Court, very recently, India Supreme Court ordered the authorities to stop the misuse of anti-dowry law after the concerns of a large number of false cases. So these acts, which were actually put forth in order to protect women, were actually used by some women to harass their male counterparts, their husbands and husbands' families and all. They started misusing these acts for their own personal needs. And the Supreme Court of India said, enough is enough. We will not allow any more misuse. And it is, we have to be very careful while taking such cases. Why? Because a large number of these cases are false accusations. On 27th of July 2017, 4 years ago, Supreme Court asked the states to set up family welfare committee in every district to address these concerns. District legal services authorities were supposed to set up the panels. There should be a designated officer to investigate such complaints and take caution uh, during the matters of bail and all. If you remember, these kinds of atrocities committed against women are mostly non-bailable. So the person, if that accusation is made, then the accused will probably be in jail for a very long time until he gets bail from the court. Okay, so the Supreme Court has said that there should be proper precautions before, uh, looking into the aspect of bail. Otherwise, an innocent man can be in the jail for a very long time because of all these false accusations and manipulation of these laws. The complaints police or magistrates receive under 498A must be referred to the panels which will look into them and submit reports. So you can't take the word of the victim anymore. You have to investigate on it and then come with the suitable report and etc. etc. Understood? So the acts which were actually passed in order to protect women, some of these women tried to use it for their own personal needs, and the misuse of this act became so large that the Supreme Court had to interfere and make things more structured. But if you look at it in another way, this actually prevents a lot of genuine cases from coming into the court. Right now, because of all these people who misuse this act, a lot of genuine complaints are also not getting the enough attention as it should. Last slide for the day, steps forward. What are the steps that we can take in order to better the condition of women and strike down dowry? Amendments to the act. Obviously, the 1961 Act, Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961 needs lots of amendments. The loopholes should be plugged, unquestionably. Number one. 2. Mobilization of public opinion against dowry. This is very important. It's not just that when a dowry death happens, suddenly everybody is an activist. No. This should continue. That mobilization of public opinion against dowry is very necessary. And it should be practiced also. Okay, it is easy to come into a TV channel and say against dowry. It's easy to make a YouTube video against dowry. But the main thing is that you have to practice it on your own first. So that is again very, very important. Women should be encouraged to become self-dependent, and effort should be made to make education accessible to every girl child. True. If that girl is properly educated, she would know her rights. She would know that she deserves a dignified life equal to that of a man. She is not the slave of any man. Clear? See, she has all sorts of financial or all kinds of independence. So this enables the person to lead a dignified life. Awareness campaigns should be organized at schools, local levels, etc., and the role of youth. Correct? Okay, it's because this dowry is very much there in the India's history. You can't change it overnight. You have to, impart it into the new generation at a very early stage itself. From the school level itself, this should be, the children should be made aware of the evil of dowry, and they should be alerted against all these practices. Very recently, when the dowry that happened in Kerala, the governor of Kerala came up with a suggestion that if it is proven that it is a dowry death, then the educational qualifications of that husband should be nullified. Okay, for example, if the husband has a bachelor's in technology or BTech degree, then that BTech degree should be curtailed, cancelled. But it is not. Lots of people came against it because of the mere fact that even in case of murder or homicide, whatever, we do not cut the educational degree of people. Clear? I mean, just think about it. Even if you have killed 10 people and you are in jail or you get capital punishment, still cutting off the educational degree is not implemented as a punishment in India. Okay, but anyway, the important point is various people are coming up with different ideas on how to tackle the evil of dowry, and governor of Kerala, Arif Muhammad Khan, he came up with this idea And there is a lot of discussion going on regarding how to deal with all these things. It's a good idea. It's a good, good intention, but how much is it practical? That was the question. Okay. Now, influential people, rather than preaching, should start setting examples. Very, very important point. Okay. Whenever you see a dowry death in, case, or whatever case it is, okay, suddenly we see a lot of influential people. By that I mean political leaders, celebrities, movie stars. All these people come, sports people. All of them comes to the media and say something against it, or maybe they will tweet something against it, or whatever. They will make an Instagram post against it. But pretty much that's it. When their turn comes, they violate all these things. Okay, so instead of talking, you should start practicing. Clear. There was another very this idea in put forth by Kerala Women Commission, I think. The idea is, as far as whenever a marriage takes place, the entire marriage expense should be limited to a particular amount. For example, I don't remember the exact amount, but this was a suggestion. Okay, 10 lakhs, for example. The entire marriage expense should be limited to 10 lakh rupees. Everything, the clothing, the food, the mandapa booking, everything should be limited to, the entire marriage should be done within this particular limit. However rich you are, however poor you are, the maximum limit is 10 lakhs. This is actually a good plan. Now, if you actually implement this, then every marriage should be limited to this particular amount, so that even if you are crorepati or billionaire, still you can spend only this much for your daughter's or son's wedding, and that brings a sort of parity in the society. If the super rich people actually starts to celebrate marriage in a very wealthy fashion, providing millions into it, what will happen? The poorer sections, the middle class sections, will also aspire to conduct a grandiose marriage, and on doing so, maybe they would ruin their own economic situations, and most cases goes to bankruptcy. This is what makes the people from the middle class and lower class to take bank loans to conduct marriages. This was an excellent suggestion, but not yet made into law. We know what happens in India. There are certain marriages which are costing a lot. Okay, but then there are opposite sorts. But anyway, this is a suggestion. You can argue both sides of it. Limiting wedding expenses, that is what I just mentioned. Social practices like marriage within one's caste or clan should be abolished, so that there is the availability of a wide range of choices. Earlier, I told you a point called hypergamous marriage. That is what, or endogamous and exogamous marriages. That's what is being said here. Rather than limiting a girl's option or a boy's option to marry from his own caste or his own community, he should be allowed to marry anyone. Interreligious marriages, intercaste marriages, etc. should be facilitated. It should be encouraged. You can marry anyone you want, but whoever you like, you should be allowed to marry. You can't say, should not say that since you are a Brahmin, you should marry a Brahmin. Since you are a Christian, you should marry a Christian. So no, that should not happen. Okay, so that also can be very, very effective. Otherwise, what will happen? There will not be much choice but to go with whatever options you have, and that also facilitates dowry. Last point, women education and their empowerment with change in the social mindset is the way forward. That is very important. Society. Okay, society is formed of individuals like all of us. So each of us has to take this decision not to proceed with dowry, and to strike and to report dowry whenever we come across something. And once these individuals change, once these individuals come forward against dowry, naturally the society will eventually change, and we will have a better social setup, social structure. But unfortunately, that's not the case now. Why? Because we are, especially our older generations, are too much into traditional values and customs, and they practice all these things. At least the younger generations should change their mindset and come forward against all these evil practices, and should take a more progressive stand rather than going with these sort of discriminatory traditions from our ancient past. There are certain things that we can take inspiration from the past, but there are certain things that we should live in the past. Okay, and this is one of them. It was in the past, let's leave it there. Do not bring it to the future. Okay, so That is it. That is all regarding dowry and its practices, its origin, history, way forward, etc., etc. I hope you have understood whatever I have spoken, given in the lecture. So now let me see if you have any queries or questions. Okay. Good evening, Seema. Even if the gift is voluntary, people play a moral card to turn it into transaction. It's like backdoor entry for the, yeah, that's the problem. That's what I said. A lot of things are being misused. Okay, we have come up with an elaborate system against dowry, but that system has plenty of loopholes. If the Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961 was a solid act, then this would not have happened. But unfortunately, too many loopholes, and it is big time that we amend it. Okay, then in which type of marriage we can say the girl's consent were taken into consideration apart from Gandharva? Girls' consideration in ancient India is a very curious question. Mostly it's never done like that. But think about it, say Swayamvara, for example, that is entirely up to the girl. Those sorts of practices are there. The woman decides who she wants to marry. That is the Swayamvara form of marriage. But in the, say, Brahma form of marriage and all, which is considered very important, it's said that it is the most noble form of marriage. But there also the marriage happens based, between families. That's what I said. In an ancient India, marriage was not between individuals. It was between families. Family system in India is very, 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 traditional, conservative, and it has been there for a very long time. Clear? So individual consent was not so much important at that time. Obviously, love marriages were basically negligible. So it was all arranged marriages arranged by the parents. So and those times girl used to give the consent anyway. Why? Because that was the tradition. Girls did not know that they had the right to say no to all these things. That is why education is so much important. That is why financial independence is so much important. If she was educated and she had a financial independence, then she can say no. Okay. Now, next question. Hi, Divya. Okay, thank you, Divya. Uniform Civil Code could be advantages for eradication of dowry, but isn't it true that we have already many laws against the system? What we are lacking is more about the implementation and awareness. Obviously, this is a general statement, Satya. In every case in India, not just dowry, whatever issues we take in India, most of the problems occurs in the implementation side. That's what I said. We come whenever this dowry deaths and all happens, a lot of people come to the media and do a lot of postings, tweets, Instagram feeds, lives, etc., etc. But in the practice, everything goes, in the other way. There are also, plenty of religious leaders, politicians who says one thing and does the other thing. So implementation side needs a lot of work, but we can't make sure that the implementation happens as such. Is it possible? We can say, we can make a very beautiful law. We can legislate a beautiful law without any kind of loopholes, but implementation has to happen from the society. If the society decides that we are not going to implement it, then there is no point. However beautiful this law is, still it's worthless. Correct? So individuals has to change. They have to decide to accept it. They have to decide to implement it. And naturally, once the individual starts to reform, the society will reform, and that is the only way to fix the implementation problem. We can the right now in the current society, the easiest fix or the immediate fix is the amendment of the law, and the long-term fix is fixing the implementation part. This is not just for dowry, this is for every issue in India. Okay, so I think that's it. I don't see any more comments. So that's it from today's session. There is one more session I'm planning on how to write mains answers that I will conduct sometime later. I will announce it in the Telegram channel. Please visit it. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and like this channel. Also, I request all of you to share this video because I think this is a very important video, not just for UPSC preparation, but also for the society that we live in. Okay, so the more people know about all these laws and all, etc., the better it would be. So I think this is a highly socially relevant video. In that sense, please share this with as many people as possible. And I will upload all the PDF content in my Telegram channel ASAP, so you can download it from there. If you have any further queries or questions, you can personally contact me. The contact details are also given in the Telegram channel. Okay, so that is it for today. Bye bye.